this orchid?
Family Orchidaceae. Genus Orchis. Over 100 species here. Much beauty in this book. If you only look.
Alan? Oh, I'm sorry. It must...
Hurt.
Does it?
Only when I laugh.
Have I gone crazy? Isn't this a dream?
That's what I keep asking myself. Everything's a dream when you're alone.
Alec.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine.
And I'm your co-host, Derek Ferguson.
How you doing today, Derek?
Pretty good. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. In fact, I saw Joker last week.
I didn't even know it had opened there yet. Well, they did say it made a shitload of money. I mean, internationally. Here in America, I think it made almost $90 million the first weekend it opened.
Oh yeah, it's broken records all over the place. And yeah, with American movies in Japan, sometimes it's really weird. Most movies, it won't come out until 3 months or later here. We just got John Wick Chapter 3 just came out in theaters here, and also Brightburn, I think, is coming out next month, which I already bought on iTunes. So yeah, some movies take a while to get out here, but the ones that are, and Ant-Man and the Wasp came out here later, but the ones that are popular, the franchises that are popular or that they think will be popular, they release them at the same time. So the Avengers, even though Ant-Man and the Wasp came out here I think 2 months late, Avengers Endgame and pretty much every Avengers movie, every main Avengers movie after the first one has come out at the same time, or in the case of Captain America Civil War, it actually came out a week early.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, yeah. So what'd you think of Joker?
You know what? It's... Because I don't know if I told you this, but I was really skeptical going into it, because my whole thought about the Joker is that he's not really a character, right? He's a force of nature. He's someone who's there to challenge Batman. But as a character himself, he's all over the place, right? He's basically whatever Batman needs to be opposed to. So he is always a reflection of whatever era Batman is in at the time. So you've got, in the 60s show, he's this clownish buffoon type. And then in the 80s, he became much darker, had this much darker, harder edge to him. So he's always kind of changing based on what version of Batman he's facing. He's always that dark reflection of Batman in some way. And he's always been this chaotic force of nature type of character. But he's not a character himself. And that actually really works for the character, because it's always been this whole frightening thing about him. Who is he? You don't know who he is. You don't know where he came from. You don't know what motivates him. You don't know anything about him. And as a character, that's as a writer yourself, it's kind of hard to make a character like that a protagonist.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And that works for the character. So I was really nervous going in because they were like, oh, this is going to be an origin story for the Joker. And, you know, I've never liked the idea of the Joker having an origin story. Like, that's one of we didn't talk about this when we talked about Batman, but that was one of the things that kind of disappointed me, the fact that he had this backstory going into it, where he was the guy who killed Bruce Wayne's parents, and he worked for the mob and all that stuff. Yeah.
To my mind, and I don't know if we went into this when we did the Batman episode that we should have went in. See, my whole thing is that I don't think Batman should ever catch the guy that killed his parents, Joe Chill.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. I mean, that's one of the things that when they did, I think it was 0 Hour in the comics, they changed it so that the guy who killed Batman's parents his identity was never uncovered. That was the one case he could never solve. And I think that's always been kind of a good thing for the character, because he never knows. And that's one of the reasons that motivates him, because he's never cracked that case.
Right. Well, see, to me, that's the whole thing. Because if you're Batman and you catch the guy that kills your parents, you say, okay, well, I can stop now.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, you never know. No matter how many crooks you catch, you never know if that's the guy.
In fact, there was actually there was a fan theory about the first Batman movie that Joker didn't actually kill his parents, but he actually psychologically projects that on every villain he goes after.
Okay. I can see that.
That doesn't quite hold up to the movie itself, because he looks up the file and everything, and Joker acknowledges it himself, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless.
Yeah, well, listen, when it comes to the psychological aspect of Batman, that's always interesting to delve into, which is what makes the character, really. That's what gives him he's got that psychological, depth to him, you know. And, but I mean, I've heard a lot about this movie. I haven't seen it yet. And I'm not sure. Okay, I didn't want to go see it because I was like you. I didn't think that the Joker deserved or needed to have an origin story.
Right.
However, the stuff that I've been reading and doing a lot of thinking myself about the times that we live in, I'm wondering if this isn't the Joker movie that we deserve, because our entertainment is a reflection of who we are.
Right.
And like you said, and as you said, the Joker back in the 1960s, yeah, he was this, he was the Joker, but he wasn't a psychopathic, murderous, force of nature.
Right.
But gradually over the years, the Joker has become increasingly darker and darker. And I'm saying, wait a minute, how dark can they push this character? But then again, we're pushing our own society into a very dark place.
Right.
And we're just getting darker and darker, in the things that are going on in our society now. So maybe this Joker movie is only a reflection of what is actually happening to our society now. I mean, I don't know. I have to go see this. But like I said, from what I'm hearing from a lot of people, it seems to me that this movie is nothing more than just an accurate reflection of what's happening to us now.
Oh, it totally is. It totally is. And so that's the thing. Like, I hated the idea of a Joker origin story. I'm like, we don't need an origin story. The Joker's not really a character. He's chaos personified. We don't need to see that guy. Like, it takes away from the character's mystery and his strengths if you actually make him a character, ironically enough. But so I was really nervous about seeing it. And, like, the only Joker origin story I've ever really liked somewhat was the flashbacks in Killing Joke. And part of it is because in Killing Joke, like, the Joker himself says, sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another way, and he says, if I'm going to have a backstory, I want it to be multiple choice. So It's like this, he's constantly recreating his memory. So you don't know, he's the definition of an unreliable narrator in that story. You don't know if everything you've read about his past is true or not. And even still, like, the details they give are very limited, and they never, like, reveal his name or anything like that. And The Dark Knight did this as well to an extent. Whenever he talks about how he got the scars, it's always a different story.
It's always a different story, right? Yeah, I you know what? I've always felt that they should do, if DC had wanted to do it. I remember, I think it was back during the 80s when DC was publishing a magazine called Secret Origins. And they did an 80-page special on the Phantom Stranger. And they had like 4 or 5 different origin stories for the Phantom Stranger. And they said, okay, well, whichever one you like, you know, you can make that his origin, or if you don't want any of them to be his origin, that's okay. And I said, you know what? That would work for the Joker. If you could just... Yeah. I mean, every time you see him and he shows up, he's got a different origin story. That works for me, well, you know, instead of just saying, okay, this is his definitive origin.
Denny O'Neil said that when he was editing the Bat books, at several times, like, writers tried to give Joker the Jack Napier name from the movie, and every time he shot them down, he's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And like they did do it one time, but it was in an Elseworld story, which the Batman White Knight story, where the Joker goes sane and becomes like a hero for Gotham. Which, if you haven't read it, guys, it's a really good story. It's called Batman White Knight, and I think they might still have a sale going right now on. I mean, they've always got a sale at Comixology. So, but check it out.
Them people already got enough of my money. Okay. Oh man, they kill me with their sales. They kill me with it. But you know something? Here's the thing about their sales is that it's so damn cheap. You feel like an ass for not buying it.
Yeah. And they're always, and they know they got me because now I'm. Like, the Facebook algorithms know that I'm into that, so, like, I'm always seeing the ads for Comixology on Facebook. I'm like, all right, well, let me check what the sales are today.
Oh, man, yeah, you know, but, again, like I said, there's so much good stuff, and it's so cheap that, you know, like I said, well, damn, there's no way I cannot buy this. I gotta buy it.
In fact, I just bought the first trade for the Buffy reboot, because they rebooted Buffy in the comics.
And how much was that?
That was like, I don't know, like $3-4 or something, maybe $5.
I mean? Okay,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. See what I mean?
Yeah, they're killing me. So I was planning on waiting until this movie came out to iTunes or something to go ahead and rent it there, because I'm just like, you know what, I'm not going to go see it in the theater. I don't care that much about it. And when I saw the trailers, and I'm like, yeah, it looks interesting, but I still had that bias going in. So. But my girlfriend actually wanted to see it. So she's like, well, let's go see Joker. And I'm like, oh, all right, fine. Let's go see Joker then. So we went to see it, and went to see it on Friday night, and which I was surprised that she wanted to see it. I mean, but she likes horror movies, and I've gotten her into superhero movies, so she really wanted to see it. So we went last week on Friday, and, like, there have been 2 extreme views on this movie, right? There are people who say it's a masterpiece, it's the greatest movie ever made, and then there are other people who are like, oh, it's terrible, it's absolute shit. And I'm just like, and I'm like smack in the middle. I'm like, you know what? It's a good movie. A little bit too much, you know, jerking off over Scorsese films, because there's tons of like Taxi Driver and King Comedy references and all that. And yeah, it gets a little full of itself at times, but overall, it's really good. And I was really impressed because the director is Todd Phillips, who's done like The Hangover and Road Trip and movies like that.
Yeah, this is the same guy that did The Hangover.
Exactly. Yeah. See, now that's the one reason why I would want to see it, because, you know, I'm saying, wait a minute, because I remember The Hangover, how crazy those movies was, and this seemed just so completely different from those. I couldn't even imagine what would possess him to want to do something like this. But I admire him, you know, and like you said, you know, everybody is talking about. They say, okay, well, if you see Taxi Driver and 1970s Martin Scorsese, they said that this movie is very much in the vein of that. Yeah. It definitely is. And yeah, like if you've seen Taxi Driver, if you've seen King Comedy, it basically follows the same beats of those movies. But even still, it's a good movie. It's entertaining. Joaquin Phoenix is amazing in it. He does a really great job. But like overall, like my whole, even coming out of it, my whole thing is, you know what? It's a great movie. It's not the Joker. but it's still a great movie.
Well, you heard what the latest theory is now, right?
I don't know. I've heard so many theories since this movie came out.
Okay, well, I just heard one today. That this is the latest theory, that this is not actually the Joker who ends up being Batman's arch nemesis. He's just like the inspiration for the guy that really does become the Joker and becomes Batman's, arch enemy.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and people are trying to link it to the DCEU through that, and they're saying maybe this will be the basis for the Batman when it comes out 2 years or something like that. And I'm just like, you know what? Just let the movie stand on its own. Todd Phillips said the same thing. He's like, you know what? It's just this movie. We're not planning on doing anything else after this. So just let it stand on its own. It works on its own. You don't need to connect it to anything larger. Why
can't you just take it as the filmic equivalents of Elseworlds?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's how I look at it. Anyway, it's Elseworlds. This is Elseworlds.
Yeah. And it's like people are always trying to link stuff together that doesn't have to be linked. So I remember when Batman Begins came out, everyone was like, "Oh, this is a prequel to the '89 Batman because he gets the Joker card at the end." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's a completely different movie."
Yeah.
Just enjoy it for what it is. Not everything has to be interconnected.
Man, listen, people on the internet have way too much time on their hands. Remember when that movie Life came out and people was trying to link that into Venom? They were saying, "Oh, this is a backdoor prequel to that movie, Venom." And they said, "No, and the filmmaker said, "No, it's got nothing to do with Venom."
Every time, people bend over backwards, because I'm on Reddit and I check out some of the movie subreddits every now and then, or the Marvel Studios ones. Man, the amount of things that people dissect these films and try to fit things together that don't fit together, it's unbelievable.
If they would put that much brain power into figuring out how to improve their lives.
Yeah.
Which is why I tell people all the time, you know what, take that same brain power that you using trying to, figure out the continuity of the X-Men movies and figure out how to get a job, maybe. But hey, that's just me, folks.
No, I'm right with you there. Yeah. All right. So, today we're talking about the 1982 Swamp Thing, which was your recommendation.
Right. Okay. And listen, let me make a note. Let me watch Joker, and then we'll get back and we'll do a whole episode about that.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
But we're doing Swamp Thing today. It's the movie that I picked because, as you folks know, me and Perry, we alternate. He picks one, then I pick one, then he picks one, he picks one. And I picked this one because I knew we were going to be doing it in October. Mm-hmm. And October, of course, is, Halloween is in there. So the whole month is kind of dedicated to, the supernatural and horror and gothic stuff and vampires and werewolves and stuff like that. So I picked, I just didn't pick Swamp Thing at random, although it may seem like I did. But no, I did it because, for one, it was written and directed by that great man, Wes Craven.
Yeah. In fact, this was his first major movie, basically, because before this, he'd done, low-budget horror movies. He'd done Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes, but this was, basically his audition tape to show the studios that he could handle a bigger budget. He could handle, stunts and action and that kind of thing.
Right, yeah. And as a lot of people know, and for those of you who don't, Wes Craven created my all-time favorite horror movie franchise, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a big slasher movie fan, but Nightmare on Elm Street is, it's head and shoulders above the rest.
You can keep Friday the 13th. Halloween, the only ones that I like is the first one and the third one. You can keep the rest of those. Have you seen
the new Halloween? That brought back Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yes, I did.
What'd you think of that one?
Meh.
Oh, really? I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a nice way to because because it was an update. It's a new sequel to the first Halloween movie. It ignores everything else.
Yeah, but you know what? I kind of, but see me, like I became played out with Halloween like a long time ago. You know, I think really the last, I actually went to see the Rob Zombie Halloween, only because I like Rob Zombie, because I remember him from when he hosted Turner Classic Movies, their Underground, and I was really impressed with his overall knowledge of film, period. I mean, the guy just doesn't know horror movies. Believe me, Rob Zombie knows movies like a monkey knows coconuts. So that's why I went to see it. However, I felt about Michael Myers the same way that we feel about the Joker. He's a character I didn't feel needed an origin story.
Right.
And I think that Rob Zombie's Halloween would have been much better if he had did that. I felt like he wanted to do his own story, and he just called it Halloween to capitalize on it. I really don't think he wanted to really remake Halloween. You know, I think he just wanted to do a redneck white trash horror movie. Really?
Yeah, which is what he keeps making over and over again.
well, yeah, basically, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know. Listen, that's a respectable genre to work in. And I think that when he sticks with his original characters, like, there's a reason why everybody says The Devil's Rejects is his best movie. Because it's all him.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I kind of got played out with him, actually, when I saw, because I saw his, Halloween was a step up for him, because I went into House of a Thousand Corpses, because, you know, there's all this talk about how they couldn't find a distributor because it was so extreme, and I went to see it, I'm like, this is nothing. So I was kind of disappointed in it because of that, and so Halloween. Then I skipped Devil's Rejects, and then Halloween actually kind of made me take another look at him, because it was really well done, even if it was kind of flawed in places with the origin story.
Listen, I mean, you know what? Rob Zombie, even though I feel that for me, a lot of times he's a hit or miss kind of director, the one thing I respect about him is that he's never boring.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
and that's what'll keep me coming back. Like, what was it? Lords of Salem. I like that. I don't like that. But like I said, there's others of his movies. Like, okay, I'm with you. House of a Thousand Corpses. I didn't like that. You know. But like I said, he's not boring. And if he comes out with a movie, I'll see it. You know, simply because he knows how to tell a story. He knows how to keep a story moving. He knows what to do with character. He knows when to tell a story visually, and he knows when to tell it with dialogue. So, on that basis, and and he's got a lot of that too. I mean, The Nightmare on Elm Street, The Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left, The Serpent and the Rainbow, which is like one of the most underrated horror movies ever made. People Under the Stairs. You know, I mean, Wes Craven, to me, he's the man. He can do no wrong, and he does no wrong with Swamp Thing.
Oh, and he reinvented the slasher genre when he did Scream, with, going full on meta with that movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, long after people thought that the genre was dead, he came back and said, "Nope, I'm going to bring this corpse back to life." And in fact, clear.
and because we were watching, my girlfriend and I, we watched the first two Scream movies last week, actually, and you know what? They still hold up. They're still really good. Like, they're not scary at all, but it's more like what he's saying about the genre.
Yeah. And to me, it's the same way with The Nightmare on Elm Street. To me, I can watch
New Nightmare, which is completely underrated.
It's still, to me, because I don't. Well, how can I put it? You know what? He played with reality in the same way that my second favorite horror movie franchise does, which is Phantasm. Both of them play with dreams and reality in a way. And in every Nightmare on Elm Street movie, they did something different. It's not like Friday the 13th, where, frankly, I can't keep them straight in my head. Which one is which, because they all kind of like blend to one big mishmash. But every Nightmare on Elm Street movie, yeah, I can say, okay, I can tell you what this one's about. I can tell you what that one's about. I can tell you what this one's about.
There were only, I think, maybe 3 Friday the 13th movies I actually liked, and they're not the ones you'd expect. So they're Jason X, just because it's completely over the top and it just has no fucks to give.
Yeah.
Freddy versus Jason.
Out of space,
yeah,
right?
that's the one where they go into space. Yeah, and it's just it's like half parody the whole time, and it's hilarious. Yeah. And then Freddy versus Jason.
Freddy versus Jason. Yeah.
Again, that's another movie. They're just like, you know what? We're just gonna have fun with this, and it's a lot of fun. And the other one is one that a lot of horror films are gonna get pissed off at me for saying this, but the Friday the 13th remake. We had Jared Padalecki from Supernatural and Danielle Panabaker from The Flash. And Derek Mears, who's he plays Jason in that, and he plays the new Swamp Thing, actually, bringing it back to this movie in the DC Universe TV show. But I thought they did a really good job with that reboot, because they mixed elements from the original series. They kind of fit things together really well. And you had one guy who, I think it was the guy who plays Han in the Fast and the Furious movies. He's in it too, and he's absolutely hilarious.
Oh, okay. Now, see, I've never seen it, but based on your recommendation, yeah, I'm going to check it out now.
Yeah, like I'm sure if you're a Friday the 13th, devotee, you're going to hate it. But I thought it was a really well done movie.
Okay, cool, interesting. Like I said,
they had Jason more as like this, because they really leaned into the fact that he was a kid when he was presumed dead, and they open up with his mother like in the first movie, and she's in like a prequel part of the movie, and then she disappears pretty much for the rest of the movie after she dies. And then he grew up on his own in the woods. So he's basically like a survivalist type. And they really leaned into that. So he's kind of like a Rambo type of figure, like setting traps to kill his victims.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's something different.
Yeah, so I definitely check that out. I think you'll really like it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, listen, I wouldn't have bothered unless somebody whose opinion I trust, like you, says, okay, you ought to check it out. So, yeah, I'm going to make it a point to check that out. But yeah, like most of those horror movie franchises, first of all, you have to realize something. When I was growing up, horror movies never scared me. See, I had other things that scared me, like going to school and dealing with bullies and dealing with the neighborhood I grew in and stuff like that. That shit scared me. Horror movies, I watch them and I can appreciate them like for entertainment. Right. Like to scare me? No, they don't scare me, Yeah. I mean? But,
there are precious few that have scared me. Like, I think some of the Japanese ones have scared me. The Insidious movies, those have creeped me out and they've scared me at times. The Exorcist, when I first watched it, scared the crap out of me.
Okay.
But other than that, like most of them, The Shining too. When the first time I saw that, it scared the crap out of me. But most times, like they don't scare me.
Yeah, now some of them Japanese ones. What was this Japanese movie I saw last year? Something with the devil was in the title. Oh man, that thing was good though.
I'm not sure. I don't think I know that one. I probably will know it if you remember the title, but yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember.
And the one
like
that you recommended to me, the one with that the Japanese director that you're in love with.
Audition, Takashi Miike.
Yeah, Ichi the Killer.
Oh, Ichi the Killer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That one, that one freaked me out for a couple of days after I saw that.
That one, I got to do that on my Japanese podcast, actually, at some point, because I haven't seen that movie in a few years. Because that's one of the movies that I'm not going to show in my class.
No. And see, I made that mistake of watching that movie at night. I think I watched it by 12 o'clock at night. And I said, that movie, Requiem for a Dream, I should never watch movies at night. Oh, my God.
Requiem for, which actually has a Japanese reference in it, because the scene when she's in the bathtub, that's a reference to this psychological thriller anime called Perfect Blue.
Oh, okay.
which you
that's
should
one.
check that out because that's really intense.
That's one of those movies that you know what? I appreciate having seen it because of the technical artistry and the acting and stuff like that. But that's a movie, if I never see it again in life, it's all right with me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that movie in like maybe 15 years, and I don't think I'd be able to sit through it again.
Yeah, oh, man, no. I mean, I recommend it to people, but I tell them, listen, if you're going to watch it during the daytime.
And make sure you're in a good mental place when you watch it. Too.
Right. Yeah, that too. You know, put yourself in a good mental place because after you watch it, oh man.
Yeah. All right. So Swamp Thing.
We've digressed enough.
So, what's your memory of this movie? Because I'm sure you've seen this before. You know, we chose it for this episode.
Yeah, I saw this like many movies that I've seen, and just let me explain something real quick for you good people that are listening to this. You're going to hear me refer to a movie a lot of times as a grindhouse movie. That's because a lot of movies that you've seen at home, and I've had this argument with people when I refer to a movie as a grindhouse movie, they say, oh, no, that's not grindhouse. That's not grindhouse. Well, yeah, it's grindhouse to me because if I saw it in a 42nd Street theater, which is what most movies I saw, I consider it to be a grindhouse because that's where I saw most of my movies at during the 70s and 80s. I saw them in a grindhouse. So, yeah.
For you, grindhouse isn't just a style; it's the actual place where it's reflected in the place where you saw it. It
was the actual place I saw. Me and Tom DJ back in Better in the Dark, we did a whole episode about it. Was the whole matter of fact, it was a whole culture. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and call it a whole grindhouse culture because you went into this darkened theater. It usually smelled like pot. You know, you had guys in there who were openly selling drugs. You had people that came in there with bottles of liquor on the Friday or Saturday night. When me and Patricia went to see the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and we went to 42nd Street Grindhouse, there were people coming there with coolers full of beer and liquor, and they were selling them. I mean, and it was a party atmosphere. You know, yeah. I mean, you were coming. I mean, people were smoking weed, and you know. If I can find the episode, I will provide a link so you folks can listen to it for yourself so you know what I'm talking about. But getting back to the point of what we're talking about, yes, I consider, for me, Swamp Thing is a grindhouse movie because that's where I saw it at. And I did see it back in 1982. Went one day after work, and I wanted to see it because I knew the character from DC Comics, you know, and hey, I wanted to see what kind of movie that they could make out of this. And it had a good cast. It had Adrienne Barbeau. No more needs to be said. Ray Wise, who wasn't a big star at that time.
I was surprised when I saw Ray Wise pop up in this. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, he's not in the movie for a long, but he's in it for he's in it for like the first 10, 15 minutes. And then he gets transformed into the Swamp Thing, who was then played by Dick Durock, who actually went on to play the character not only in the sequel, but in the TV show.
On USA, which lasted like 3 seasons or something. Lasted a long time. People are surprised when I tell them, there was a Swamp Thing TV series, and it actually did last. You know, and in fact, there was also a Swamp Thing animated series, which is how I first discovered the character. Yeah, which was only 5 episodes, but it had one of the greatest theme songs. Have you seen this? The theme song for it? It's where they did it was a parody of Wild Thing.
A Wild Thing, yeah.
So instead of like Wild Thing, it's like Swamp Thing, you are amazing.
Dun, dun. Yeah. I mean, so Swamp Thing has had a pretty robust life.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Swamp Thing has had more incarnations than a lot of other more popular characters. You know, he had these 2 movies.
He's had 2 movies, 2 live action TV shows, and an animated series. Like that's like Batman or Superman level exposure. Like, Wonder Woman hasn't had that many. Green Lantern hasn't had that many. The Flash hasn't had that many.
This is what I'm saying. The Swamp Thing has had a pretty robust life. And this movie was, it wasn't a runaway blockbuster hit, but it was popular enough that it did spawn a sequel in 1989, The Return of Swamp Thing. And
which was, from what I read about it, that's much more, they lean much more into the camp side of it.
Yeah, it's much more 1960s Batman. Unlike this movie, which, like I said, I wanted to do this movie because it's October. And while the Swamp Thing, I kind of stretched it a little bit because in his comic book incarnation, Swamp Thing is firmly entrenched in the DC universe. He's met Batman, he's met Superman, he's met, otherworldly entities. As a matter of fact, he's
Stranger.
He's a cosmic entity himself.
Right. In fact, John Constantine first appeared in Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And it was because, and in fact, the very look of John Constantine was because Alan Moore asked, I can't remember the name of the artist at the time, but he asked the artist, what would you like to draw? And he says, well, I want to draw a character that looks like Sting, who was really popular at the time. So Alan Moore created John Constantine, and that's why his visual appearance is based on Sting.
And in fact, okay, there's one thing I meant to ask you because you know about this kind of stuff more than I do. You're more of a Constantine fan. Did they ever contact Sting and say, okay, listen, do you mind if we made the guy look like you or something?
Actually, I believe they did. I believe they did ask for permission to use his likeness. And in fact, I just looked it up now. There's this collection they released and which Sting wrote like an introduction to or something for his 30th anniversary. Yeah.
Cool. Because I know that when they revamped Nick Fury and they turned him into a black guy, they wanted to base his appearance on Samuel L. Jackson and contact him and said, well, listen, do you mind we make the new Nick Fury look like you? He says, as long as when you put him in a movie, I get to play him. I don't care.
Yeah.
And of course, as we know, he went on to play him in a movie.
Well, because that was because Samuel L. Jackson is actually a huge comic book fan in real life.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of people don't realize a lot of these actors, they're big comic book fans. Nicolas Cage, his actual last name, for those of you who don't know, is Coppola because he's nephew of Francis Ford Coppola. But he changed it to Cage because Luke Cage was his favorite comic book character, growing up. Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal, he had the Superman tattoo. That's why he was in the god-awful Steel movie.
Right.
Because he was a huge Superman fan.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld, too. That's why he had all those Superman references in Seinfeld, because he was a huge Superman fan.
Yeah. If you notice in the apartment he has this statue. There's a Superman statue that's on the bookcase. And it's like every time they do a shot that's done in his place, he's usually standing where you can see the Superman statue over his shoulder, if you know. And he does that on purpose.
Yeah. So with Sting, apparently he was reportedly aware of Constantine, but he didn't really contact DC or anything. DC didn't contact him, so he was just content to leave it well enough alone. And there are some rumors that say that he was asked to be in Constantine, or that he wasn't asked, or that he was asked and he refused. But either way, he wrote for the 30th anniversary collection of Hellblazer. He wrote the introduction for it.
Oh, okay. And Swamp Thing has proven to be a pretty durable, long-lasting character in the comic books. He's got a sizable following. A lot of people are major Swamp. I was more Man-Thing fan myself over at Marvel. You know, I was more of that character. But in this movie, I enjoy it because it's more of Wes Craven doing an updating of what I consider to be like a 1950s monster movie.
Right. That's exactly what and like even down to the poster, because you see the poster, it's this this hand drawn, it's this illustrated artwork of Swamp Thing carrying Adrienne Barbeau, and she's wearing the dress, and it's very much in like that old classic monster movie vein.
Right. And when you're watching the movie, he even does those wipes that they used to use back in the Universal monster movies that reminded me of it. When he goes from one scene to another, he'll do like these wipes.
Which is one of the things I did not really like about this movie.
Really?
Like, I understand why they did it, but just like the wipes, it felt like the different style of wipes. It felt too cheesy for me.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, that's understandable. But I liked it because, like I said, to me, it goes with the tone of this movie, which is less a superhero origin story and more like an updating of, you know, this is like the creature from the Black Lagoon or, you know, movies of that type. And it's very much a 1950s monster movie where the scientist Alec Holland, played by Ray Wise, he's in the South Carolina swamp. He's working on a bioengineering project with his sister, who is also
she's also a scientist,
base where he's being protected by a bunch of government agents. Comes Adrienne Barbeau playing Alice Cable is because in the original comic book, I believe that Cable is a man.
Well, yeah. So she's actually an amalgamation of two characters. So they have she's heavily based on Abigail Arcane, who's in the comics. She's the niece of Anton Arcane, and she has there's another character in the comics named Matt Cable, and that she ends up marrying him in the comics. So they kind of merged I think they merged those two together. They gave her the name. I'm not sure why they went with the name Alice instead of Abby, but for whatever reason they called her Alice Cable instead. And I think the intention for that was mostly because they didn't want to have her related to Arcane. They wanted him to be completely separated from her. Right. Yeah.
And in the movie, of course, we have Arcane, who is played with great relish by Louis Jordan, who is having the time of his life.
Oh, he eats all the scenery in place.
Yeah, but you know what? He always has a good time playing a bad guy. I mean, he did this, and there was a James Bond movie. He played the bad guy, and he was having just so much fun in that too, because he's very witty and European and urbane and classy. And even though he's in the middle of this god awful swamp, he's got this luxurious, glorious mansion that. Yeah. You said, wait a minute, where did he put? Who builds a mansion like this in the middle of a swamp? You know, but So Alec Holland, he's working on this project. One of the things I like about Adrienne Barbeau in this movie is that whenever she introduces, the only time she ever introduces herself as Alice Cable is to Holland's sister. But when she introduces herself, whenever she introduces herself to men, she just says Cable. And that's
That's a good point.
I kind of like, I like that, because it shows that she's a strong, self-sufficient woman. And, like men introduce themselves to each other with their last names. Like when I meet people, they say, oh, what's your name? I say, oh, well, Ferguson.
Right. Now, up until like the third act, that's one of the things that really impressed me is that she's very, take charge. She's very much, she's got a lot of agency in this movie.
Yeah, but once they put her in the nightgown and she becomes a damsel in distress.
Yeah, that all goes pretty much right out the window at that point.
Right. I mean, listen, not that I'm complaining about Adrienne Barbeau in a nightgown, mind you.
She looked good in it. She looked damn good in it.
Yeah. I mean, but again, it undercuts her character as strong as it's been in the first two acts.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a completely different character.
Right, exactly. It just cuts the leg out from the Cable that we see in Act 1 and Act 2 would have been trying to figure out a way to escape.
Like, because I was surprised, like, how much I was really enjoying. Because, it's a low-budget movie. It was only, like, $2.5 million, I think, was the budget. And Wes Craven was proud of himself for turning it in on time and on budget.
And he was also kind of pissed off because that wasn't the budget he was promised.
Oh, really?
No. They actually cut the budget on this movie. But considering what he had to work with, I think he did an excellent job on this movie.
Yeah, it did pretty good. Like the Swamp Thing effects, they don't quite hold up as well over time, but for $2.5 million budget, they did a pretty decent job on him. And you had Dick Durock, because one of the things in the Swamp Thing comics, one of the things that it makes it hard for me to read them because, a lot of great people have worked on them. Alan Moore did a character-defining run on the guy beginning in 1984, which is after this movie, which influenced like the new DC Universe series. And that also introduced, like we said, John Constantine and established like the supernatural connections with like Phantom Stranger and all that kind of stuff. Grant Morrison and Mark Miller did a run. Scott Snyder did. Rick Veitch. Lots of like really amazing writers have tackled this character in the comics. But one of the things that's always been tough for me to get into is in the comics, he speaks in like almost like a staccato fashion where there's lots of pauses in his dialogue, and it makes it kind of difficult to read.
Okay.
When Dick Durock first speaks as Swamp Thing, like at first he is a little stilted in his dialogue because like he's kind of replicating that. But after that, he speaks normally, which I kind of appreciated because I know it's different from the comics, but it worked for the movie because that style of in the comics, it doesn't, I don't think it would have translated well in film.
I think that because as the movie goes, and you know what? A lot of people, Dick Durock, his portrayal of Swamp Thing, you got to watch it because it's a nice little thing that he does here in this movie. And he does a lot of character things in here that's nice because, like you said, when he starts out speaking as Swamp Thing, he's talking in this very halting, stilted language. Mm-hmm. But the longer the movie goes on, the better he gets at talking, as if he's relearning how to speak.
Yeah.
So by the end of the movie, he's talking like a regular person now. But he starts off, and even his body language is like, when we first see him, he's moving very stiffly and, very awkwardly. But by the end of the movie, he's actually walking kind of gracefully through, when he walked through the swamp and we have that shot of him, he's going away. He's actually kind of graceful.
Yeah.
As if he's become comfortable in this new body that he's got now.
That's what I picked up on too. Like he's relearning what it's like to have a body, to be able to speak and all that, and which is something that I wish, like at least the speaking thing, they would have adapted into the comics because it is tough to read, man.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said, I've read the earlier when it was drawn by Bernie Wrightson. Mm-hmm. But that's like way back in, I think it was like the late 70s. That's when the character debuted.
You know the story about, because you mentioned Man-Thing, you're a bigger fan of Man-Thing. So do you know the story between Swamp Thing and Man-Thing, their connection?
No, I had no idea there was a connection.
Okay, so, because DC came out with Swamp Thing, Marvel came out with Man-Thing around the same time.
Right,
and,
okay.
And who's it who created Man-Thing?
I think it was Marv Wolfman. It was either I'm thinking Marv Wolfman or Steve Gerber because he originally appeared in Howard Duck.
Jerry Conway.
Oh,
Steve
Jerry
Gerber
Conway.
did the character-defining role on the guy.
Oh, okay.
But it was Roy Thomas and it was Jerry Conway.
Okay.
They both had they were both roommates at the time. Apparently, I can't remember. I think it was like Roy Thomas and Len Wein were. Wein and Jerry Conway. They were roommates at the time when they created it, and they were both working on it at the same time, and they didn't realize they were both kind of like doing like the exact same thing.
Ooh!
So it's just like this really weird cosmic coincidence.
Yeah, well, I've always kind of like figured because you're right. Both characters debuted like I think within a year of each other, but
Right.
I always chalked it up as being like one of those weird because sometimes there are coincidences like what was it, the Doom Patrol and the X-Men. They kind of
Right.
like. They kind of like debuted at around the same time, and there's always been this thing that was one was one copying off of the other, but they said when you look at the dates that they were published, and given the lead time to create, write and draw a whole comic book, they're saying no, there could have been no way that there could have been some copying from them. So yeah, but what was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about Dick Durock. Yeah, his performance. That's what I want to say. Everybody's performing. Okay, the thing about this movie that I appreciate, and I always appreciate it when actors take what they're doing seriously. And with material like this, it would have been very easy for people to like wink at the camera and, nudge and say, well, isn't this silly? But, we're doing this. No, everybody in this movie, they take this stuff seriously.
Yeah.
They're not giving like Shakespearean performances here, but they are giving honest, true performances.
They're committing to it. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a scene where Adrienne Barbeau, she's in the swamp thing after he's had his arm cut off while he's trying to defend her from the bad guys. And they really have a really touching moment. That's when she realizes this is the scientist, because up until now, she's just been thinking this has just been some creature that's been hanging out, but now she realizes that there's him, and they have a really touching moment together where, they bond and, they're dealing, they're trying to deal with this crazy situation that they're finding themselves into. And like I said, it's not Shakespeare, but it's a scene that shows me that Craven, who wrote the movie, took it seriously, and he insisted that his actors take it seriously as well.
Yeah. And in fact, they did have Abby Arcane in the second movie. I think it was played by Heather Locklear.
You got me. It's been so long since I've seen The Return of the Swamp Thing. I don't recall it. Although I do believe
it was the Conan the Destroyer of the franchise.
Okay.
But yeah, Heather Locklear.
Although I do believe that it's on YouTube as well, like the original Swamp Thing, which is where I saw it. So, folks, if you want to watch this movie, don't worry, you don't have to pay any rental fee. It's on YouTube, and as an added
now
bonus,
you tell me, because I paid for the rental fee.
Oh man, you should have told me. Yeah, no, but I put the link up on the site. Remember?
Oh, that must have been after I rented it. I didn't see that.
The Facebook page. Yeah. No, I put it up on the the Facebook group.
See, I just thought that was a trailer. I didn't realize that was the whole movie.
Yeah, that's the whole. Yeah, they got the whole.
You know what? I gotta click on links more often.
Now, and also, as an added bonus, this is the 93-minute international version, not the U.S. version. Why do I stress this is the international version? Because in the international version, and yes, folks, this is me being a pervy old man. This is the international version has a scene with Adrienne Barbeau bathing nude in the lake while the Swamp Thing is watching her.
Oh, okay.
And that's like
in fact, there was a bit of controversy over that scene.
Which is, because it was taken out of the American version, but apparently there was some VHS tapes that still had it in there. And parents were renting it for their kids, I remember.
Yeah, it was in... So in 2000, MGM released it on DVD, and they advertised it as being the PG version, but they had accidentally made it the 93-minute version, which had the bathing scene. And a woman in Dallas, rented it from Blockbuster Video for her kids, and then she got pissed off when she saw there was nudity in it.
Right. Okay, that's why, because I do remember hearing way back then that there was some women that had rented the movie from Blockbuster, and I thought it was the VHS tape that they rented from Blockbuster and showed it to their kids. And yeah, the American version is only 90 minutes. the international version is 93 minutes, and those extra minutes are indeed the infamous scene with Adrian Barbeau bathing nude in, the lake. So for all you pervy old men like me, the 93-minute version is on YouTube, and I would not be surprised if shortly after this episode drops, that version mysteriously disappears from YouTube.
Either that, or its view numbers are going to skyrocket.
Oh yeah, well, either one or the other, man. Either one or the other. As a matter of fact, there's also some nudity that takes place because there's a party in Arcane's castle before he feed the formula to his henchman,
Bruno.
And there's some nudity that's in there too. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, the international version is kind of risque for hooks. So
now, Adrienne Barbeau, she's been in some other DC things. In fact, you know what major DC production she was in after this movie?
Which one?
She was in Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, that's right. She played Catwoman.
Exactly. Yeah, she did the voice of Catwoman, and she also had a part in the Swamp Thing, the new series on DC Universe, which I haven't gotten to her episode yet, but she's got a part in that.
Really good for her.
That's one of the things I like about DC is that they acknowledge these past actors and they bring them on to do these different cameos and walk-on roles and that kind of stuff.
I cannot wait for this Infinite Crisis
on Infinite Earth.
That's going to happen. So I can see
yeah.
Brandon Routh playing Superman.
Oh, yeah. He's one of my favorite Supermen, and I think you too. Like, we both agree, like, even though that movie had problems, he was not one of them.
He was not the problem. Matter of fact, we should, sometime down the road, we should do Superman Returns.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I'll have a lot of good things to say about that.
That guy, he got such a bad rap for something that was not his fault.
Yeah. You know what? And you see him. He's playing Kingdom Come Superman in Infinite Crisis. And I see that.
Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes.
Oh, my God. I saw those images, and I was like, you know what? Can we just, like, I love Tyler Hoechlin in Supergirl, and he's going to be playing Superman again in this series. But seeing those images, I was like, can we get a do-over movie with him as Superman again?
Yeah, seriously, man. I mean, man, why aren't we running, like a movie studio or something like that? Because, see, I would have greenlit a movie with, Tyler, whatever his name is.
In fact, you know what someone said? Someone said on Reddit, they were like, you know what? Just give me a Kingdom Come series with Brandon Routh playing Superman. I'm like, you know what? Get Michael Keaton in there to play Batman. I would pay top dollar for that show.
Oh, man. I'd give blood.
Yeah.
Serious. For a Kingdom Come series? Or just Kingdom Come movie?
Yeah.
Oh, please. God. Oh, man. I gotta stop. My blood pressure's going up. Okay. But speaking of Adrienne Barbeau, her contributions to, because a lot of people, they say, oh, well, Adrienne Barbeau, but she was not only in Swamp Thing, she was in The Fog, she was in Creepshow, she was in Escape from New York.
Creepshow has a connection to DC as well, because Creepshow was a tribute to both the EC horror comics and also the DC horror comics too. Right,
that was the Stephen King thing. It was it was based on a bunch of Stephen King stories. But Adrienne Barbeau, she was in the one where she played she played the wife from hell, and she was hell. She managed to be both absolutely annoying and hilariously funny at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And those movies both came out in the same year too. They both came out in 1982.
Yeah. She was kind of busy in movies there for a while. I mean, she started out on TV in.
Well, she was married to John Carpenter at one point, and that's why she was in a lot of his movies.
Right. That's why she was in Escape from New York. She was in The Fog.
I think she had a minor part. She had a minor part in The Thing as well.
Really?
Yeah, I think she was did a voice or something like that.
Yeah. That was it. She appeared just as you just heard a voice, I think, over the radio or something like that.
Right. It was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was really big in horror movies. She was in Argo too, actually.
Really?
Her filmography, it's endless.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, she's been in it. A lot of people don't really know how much stuff she's been in. But Adrienne Barbeau, for a while, they're like back during like the 70s and 80s, she was in a ton of stuff. And like you said, she was the voice of Catwoman on Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, and the thing, she was the voice of the computer.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, she's done tons of voice work. Like you've heard her voice, people. Basically. But yeah, Batman the Animated Series, that ran for 3 years. And she was in Catwoman all 3 years.
Really? That's the one?
1992 to 1995.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I always think it went for 5 years, but, Okay.
Oh, no, you know what? That was because it was split up into 2 parts, basically. There was Batman the Animated Series until 95, and then it became the new Batman Adventures.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. I remember. Okay.
And then that ran and then once that ended, then they went into Justice League.
Wait a minute. So when did Batman Beyond come in?
I want to say, I think it was before Justice League.
Didn't it slide in like that period between Batman and Justice League?
Yeah. It was in 1999.
Yeah.
1999 to 2001.
Oh, okay.
And so then Justice League came out, I think, right after that.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah, Justice League began in 2001. One of the episodes of, I think it was Justice League Justice League Unlimited, they tied up some of the loose ends from Batman Begins.
Yeah, right. There was an episode that they did like the future Justice League.
Right. That, and they also had that really great episode with an older Terry McGinnis confronting Amanda Waller. And she tells him the story about when Batman confronted the Royal Flush Gang, and it was Ace, who was a little girl in this version of the Royal Flush Gang, who had like these reality warping powers or something that were killing her. And it was this really touching episode. Like, oh, guys, if you haven't seen it, go look it up on YouTube or on DC Universe. But it's an amazing episode where like Batman at his most human. Like talking to this girl, like she's gonna die, and like she has to either stop the illusion or be killed to stop the illusion or something like that. And he goes in there, and Amanda Waller tells him, you're gonna have to kill her, and he does it. He just sits with her on the swing and he talks to her, and it's like this amazingly touching episode. Which is why,
for so many people, Kevin Conroy is Batman.
Oh, God, yeah.
And Batman in his animated version is so well written. I love the episode where where it's the episode, everybody has to sing a song that reveals their innermost self. It's got Satana in it. I'm trying to think. And he gets up there and I think he sings Am I Blue? or something like that. And it turns out that Batman can really sing. He's got a good singing voice. Oh my!
Speaking
God.
of Conroy, he's going to be playing. Batman in the Crisis.
Yeah. I mean, they're going all out with this one. I have no idea how they're going to fit in all these people into it, and I don't care. I'm going to watch. I'm going to sit and watch it and just enjoy. And like you were saying earlier, I'm glad that they are acknowledging and honoring the people that went before. Like when they got John Wesley Shipp to play the Flash.
Oh, that was so good.
Oh, that was so good. I mean, come on. I mean,
and that was such a good fake out too, because they made it seem like Jay Garrick was the villain in that season, and then you find out at the end, he just took Jay Garrick's name. Yeah. I mean, that was, and then they even had an episode where he put him back in the original costume he wore. Yeah, the Elseworlds crossover from last year.
I really appreciate stuff like that because, see, they don't have to do it, but that says to me that they got respect for the material. Right.
That's something I wish Marvel would do more of, because they've had other people play like Doctor Strange and Captain America, and it would be nice just those movies were terrible, basically, but it'd still be nice to have like some sort of nod to them.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, when it's my turnaround next to pick the movie, I fully intend to pick. I'll tell you right now what I want to pick. I'm going to pick the Doctor Strange TV movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that'll be interesting to watch. So, spoiler alert: we're going to be watching Doctor Strange 2 episodes from now. All right, now. You know what? You know who my favorite character in the Swamp Thing movie is?
Who was your favorite character in the Swamp Thing
Take
movie?
a guess. I want you to try and guess.
Bruno.
No. My favorite character is Jude.
Oh, the little black kid.
That kid is the most practical motherfucker in any horror movie ever.
This little black kid who was apparently running this gas station out in the middle of the swamp by himself. We never see any parents. He never mentions any parents. Apparently, Jude is just running this part in the swamp by himself.
Yeah, he's doing all this by himself. And he's navigating the swamps and shit. And he is the most practical person in this movie.
Nothing phases this kid.
No. And he's just like, he's like, I got no time for this white nonsense.
Yeah. And, he takes everything in stride.
Yeah.
When he's brought back to life by the Swamp Thing, he just looks up at him and says, "Oh, your Cable's friend, right?" I love this
A
kid.
giant swamp monster is standing in front of you. He just brought you back to life. It's like, oh yeah, you're Cable's friend.
Yeah. That Swamp Thing, and it's a nice look because Swamp Thing is like, after a while he starts smiling himself because he's saying this kid is so cool. So nothing phases you. Nothing.
Yeah. I love that kid. He's the best part of the movie, easily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Cable comes in, she walks in and he's just talking to her like, like, I see white women walking here every day, I mean, like out of nowhere. And, like he gets caught up in this story helping her. And because of this kid's confidence, the kid that plays the part, what's his name? Because we really
Reggie
need
Batts.
Kid to shot, huh?
Reggie Batts.
Reggie Batts. This kid does. If you all guys watch this movie, and I hope that you certainly do, look out for this kid because his confidence and his self-assuredness is, while he's navigating through this story, is really something to see because after a while you start to forget that he's a kid. Yeah.
And he's only been in this. Like, it's just this. This is the only movie he's ever been in.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, maybe he just didn't want to, he didn't want to do any acting because
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, this kid could have had a future.
And I love that he's wearing these big ass glasses the whole time too.
Oh man, that took me back because when I was that age, I wore a big ass pair of glasses like that too. I said, "Oh my god!" It's
so
like
basically, this kid was you back in the day.
Yeah, well. No, you know what? I wasn't that confident and self-assured as he is. I definitely wouldn't have been running a gas station out in the middle of a swamp by myself. But he's the type of character that, as the movie goes on, you want to know more about him.
Yeah.
You say, well, where's his family? Where is it? And you know what? I imagine that his parents are like, what's that kid who's in The Simpsons? And his parents look exactly like him. Milhouse.
Oh, yeah.
I imagine that Jude has a mother and father that look exactly like each other. And they look like him. That's who I imagine his parents looking like.
Well, and also, like when Arcane's men attack the gas station, and he's like, oh yeah, I got a shotgun in here.
Yeah. Like armed mercenaries, they attack his gas station like every day. I got a shotgun. Yeah, no problem. I said, well, you know what? I guess maybe to live that type of life, that's how you have to be.
I guess so, yeah.
But yeah. Okay, I'll go with you on that. Yeah, he makes the movie because he's a character that you don't expect to see. And that's the thing about this movie, too, and that it gives us characters that we don't expect. And then, like, both the henchmen, Ferret. Ferret's a guy, we're introduced to him, and they capture one of the government agents that are protecting the complex that Holland is working in. And they capture him, and Ferret pulls a poisonous snake out of his pocket. Why is this guy walking around with, and even the other henchmen, like Bruno, looks at him like, dude, really? Yeah, what are you doing?
And he's played by David Hess, who was in Last House on the Left.
Oh, you know what? He do look kind of familiar. Okay, yeah, he did look familiar to me. It's one of those things where I was watching and I said, yeah, I've seen this guy before in some other movie.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where. Because he's got like that kind of really goofy, crazy grin.
Right, and it's like the very distinctive hair.
Very distinctive, exactly. And it's like one of those things that, yeah, I know this guy, but I was too busy enjoying his performance because he was like off the wall from, beginning to end in this thing. And I love the scene where he thinks he's drowned because they take Cable out. They found her after she's hidden one of the notebooks because that's the MacGuffin that's in this movie, in that they have Holland's notebooks.
Right. Then they've got all 6 of them, but there's a 7th one that unlocks the final secret to his formula.
And that's the one that Cable has hidden in the ruins of the lab. But they don't know that. So they take her out to drown her. And Ferret is holding her head down and he thinks he's drowned. And of course, who pops up but Swamp Thing?
Right.
And proceeds to overturn the boat and kick plenty of ass in the process.
They really downplay what Swamp Thing can do in this movie, though, compared to the comics. Because in the comics, he's got he's got like full control over like the plants and the vegetation and everything. In this, basically, he's basically just super strong and he can heal people. And that's pretty much all he does. Yeah,
because there's a part where Cable is shot and he takes like a bunch of moss from his chest and places it on, the gunshot wound. And it heals the gunshot wound. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, there's a part where Jude gets killed and he brings, Jude is shot and he brings it back to life. And his arm gets cut off and he regrows the arm. Yeah. And
they say, like, because when they're in the Arcane's dungeon, she's like, it's the sunlight. This, that's what gives you, like, kind of like Superman. So he's like trying to reach out to gather enough solar energy as he can to replenish himself.
Yeah. And when he reaches up the one good hand he has and he gets the sunlight, then we see it's like a little twig start growing out of, the stump. And then gradually it regrows into another arm. Yeah, so they kind of like, they say, basically he's a super plant. But given the budget that they have, they couldn't go into all those other arcane abilities that he has, from the comic book because I think that he can even time travel or something like that.
I can't remember. I think so, yeah. The character from the comics. You're watching him fight these guys, and he's just, slugging it out with them. He's not, like, using vines or anything to knock over their boats or anything like that.
Right, yeah. Basically, he's super strong. He's super strong, and he's got that healing thing, working for him. Again, they had a limited budget, to work with, and most of it, but which is why I guess that they shot most of this stuff outside. They took advantage of the fact that it was in the swamp, because that's where 90% of this movie takes place. It takes place in the swamp. You got that little bit that's in Holland's lab, which gets burned down, and then you have those scenes in
Arcane's mansion.
Which was the soundstage, I imagine. They went back to Hollywood to film the soundstage. But other than that, 90% of this, most of this movie is actually filmed in the swamp, actually.
That dinner party, it's so weird because the beginning of the movie, you find out that Arcane is like this terrorist paramilitary leader, but he's got this mansion, right? And nobody knows where he is, but he's got this mansion there, and he brings all these like wealthy guests over for a dinner party.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah. Supposedly because the guy that's at the beginning, he says, first of all, everybody thinks that he's dead. He's supposed to be dead. And then this other guy said, well, no, he's not dead. And then as we find out, I don't want to spoil it if anybody wants to see it, but then we find out that the guy who says that he was dead, we find out that there's good reason why he wanted people to think that Arcane was dead. So, but he has the party because he has the formula, and he brings all of these rich assholes to this mansion. Again, I'm saying he's got like this 18th century mansion that's in the middle of the swamp.
Did anyone try to look for him in his big ass mansion?
Yeah. This guy's not like Blofeld. He's not like trying to hide out in a remote mountaintop fortress or someplace like that. He's in the middle of a swamp where I imagine it would be fairly easy to find him.
That's so funny because you were mentioning how he was in a Bond movie. He was in Octopussy, and he's basically a Bond villain in this movie. You got Swamp Thing going up against. It's like a Bond villain wandered into the wrong movie set.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, something. That's a very good point you make, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, he's playing a James Bond villain that wandered into a monster movie.
Yeah. Because he is not the typical mad scientist. He dresses her up in a gown. That's a total James Bond movie cliche.
Yeah, because in any other movie, what would happen was that Alec Hollywood, die, burned up, and we would spend the rest of the movie. We would see Cable trying to get out of the swamp. She has the notebooks. She's trying to get out of the swamp, and the mercenaries, they're chasing her.
Yeah. Or you'd have James Bond come in to swoop in and help her out.
Well,
because they talk about she needs to get the notebook to. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's like a mix of like spy movie with monster movie.
Yeah.
Because you got her trying to get because she's I think she's a government scientist. She's trying to get the notebook back to DC, and you're just waiting for you think you're going to have someone like Bond or Tom Cruise or someone swoop in to come in and retrieve the notebook, but instead you get Swamp Thing.
Well, I don't know if she's a scientist because they refer to her as being an agent. They never say what she's an agent for because remember she's replacing the other guy.
Yeah. She's a government worker. It just says here.
It's the guy that's leaving out of there. And they saying, well, where's he going? She says, okay, where's he going? They said, listen, he's had enough. They said, listen, he lasted longer than most other people did. Going back to what you were saying earlier, because she has a scene where she kicks a couple of guys' asses and she takes a gun and she's like blazing away and she runs them away from the lab. So she's like some kind of government agent. They never say what agency she's working for. Presumably it's like the FBI or the CIA. They send out somebody,
which kind of makes the scene, the third act change all the more disappointing because you've seen throughout the whole movie that she can hold her own, she can kick some ass herself, and then at the end she just becomes a damsel in distress. Yeah,
this is what I'm saying. There's a guy that tackles her and throws her to the ground, and she kicks him in the nuts and gets up and kicks him in the nuts again, and she starts running. Yeah. And then she runs into some other guys and she beats them up and she grabs a machine gun and she and they're hauling ass to the swamp and she's standing there like, yeah, come get some, And then, like you said, in the third act, okay, once Arcane sticks her in that beautiful nightgown, it's like she's content to be your typical helpless female now. Which doesn't jive with the character that we were promised early on in the movie. It would have been more interesting to, like I said, the Cable we saw earlier would have been figuring out how to escape.
She does talk Swamp Thing through it, and to her credit, but they could have done a lot more with that sequence there.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt.
And then you get but talking about Arcane and what a bastard he is. Like during that dinner party. He's talking about the formula and how they've cracked the code, and he tests it by slipping it in Bruno's drink.
Yeah, the guy who's been the most loyal to him through the whole thing. And Bruno, and it's cracking because Bruno is sitting up there, and every time Arcane says something, he's the first one applauding, and he's nudging other people. Applaud. And Arcane says, yeah, and Bruno, you've been such a loyal guy to me, and I appreciate everything you did. And Bruno said, yeah, well, okay, boss, who we going to test this on? Arcane said, well, I'm testing it on you. You just drank it. Oh, shit. And Bruno said, what? Really? Me? And then we find out, because Bruno falls up under the table, and when he comes out, he's turned into this pig man.
Yeah, very short, too.
And Arcane is really pissed off because he goes to Swamp Thing and he says, what happened? Why didn't it work? He said he was supposed to have been turned into because apparently Arcane believes that this formula is going to turn you into some kind of superior being.
Right.
And Swamp Thing tells him, yeah, but you don't get it. He said the formula only makes you more what you already are.
Yeah, amplifies your own qualities.
He said, so if you're an asshole, it's gonna make you more, which is what it does to Arcade.
Yeah, and so they say, like, Bruno, because he's timid, he's not got a lot of confidence, he's always like subservient, and that's why he became like this short guy.
Right. That's why I became this little guy. It said because Arcane says, oh, okay, yeah, well, he was weak and stupid inside. So, he said, yeah. So then Arcane, because he's got this ego that makes him think he's a superior person. He said, well, I don't have to work, because if I take it, I'm going to turn into a god. Needless to say, he takes the formula, and no, he does not turn into a god.
No, he's like this, this like boar-like thing or whatever.
Yeah, but he turns into this. But to give him his credit, apparently he still got his intelligence, because the first thing he does is rip a big ass sword off the wall and goes running down. Yeah. And then Bruno gets back at him for turning him into this, because he helps Swamp Thing and Alice escape then. Yeah. But it cracks me up the way he just runs and rips the sword off the wall, and he's running down the stairs. And I say, yeah, you know something? There's nothing wrong with his brains, though. He said, you know what? I'm gonna kill me that plant, man.
Well, that's something. That's something they do, because all three of them, nothing. It doesn't affect their mind at all. They're all still like Bruno is still Bruno, Alec is still Alec, Arcane is still Arcane. They're still, their mental capacities are still all there. It's not like a Hulk situation. Right. Yeah. They still have their intelligence, and they're, which of course in a monster movie, that's what makes the situation even more poignant, because Alec Holland, he remembers who he once was. And, he realizes he can never be that guy, which is why I don't understand this movie. This is one of these movies where you say, well, you know what? Cable, she's a government agent. Why does she just take him back to Washington and say, listen, well, she does offer. She does offer, if you remember.
Yeah, and, he says, oh, no, I got to go hang out in this swamp now for the rest of my life. Okay, if he still got his intelligence, why doesn't he just say, okay, well, I'll go back with you, which would have made a more interesting sequel to me, to have him back at Washington, because even if he can't work with his hands, he's still got his mind, apparently. So you know what? I think the reason for that, and they don't ever mention this in the movie, but I think the subtext is there because he saw what Arcane tried to do with his formula when he had him. So I think he's worried, like, if I go to the government, what'll they do then with this information? Yeah, I know. Because don't forget, it's 1982, so this is we got the Reagan years here, so he's not really, who wasn't exactly against human rights abuses, right? But you always got these self-sacrificing scientists that that no, I cannot have my work corrupted by the government. I must be a Swamp Thing forever. He does say though, he does say, I will return one day. You're like, he's like, because she says, let's rebuild your work. You can cure yourself. And he says, like, I'm gonna go now. He's like, but I will return. And she says, when will you be back? He said, as soon as the grosses of this movie come in. That'll determine if I'll be back or not. And then he did come back, but it wasn't Adrienne Barbeau did not. No. She moved. By then she had moved on to other things. Yeah, and then but Dick Durock, he played Swamp Thing in this movie, and then he did it in the sequel and in the USA TV show. Yeah, don't quote me on this. I'd have to look it up, but I believe that he even made personal live appearances as Swamp Thing. Yeah. I remember reading something about that. Yeah, like all over the country. He would go to like conventions and stuff like that. And, I don't know, shopping mall openings and stuff like that. And, he made a nice little career out of playing, He did pretty good for himself, I would say, playing what most people would consider to be a B character in the pantheon of superheroes. He made himself a nice little career, playing Swamp Thing.
Well, yeah, it was the TV show. Like they used the same suit from the Return of the Swamp Thing movie.
They filmed it at Universal Studios down in Florida.
Doesn't say on here.
Okay, I seem to remember something, reading and hearing something about there was a big, because they had like a Swamp Thing stunt show at Universal Studios down there at one time, I believe.
It's gotten a lot of mixed reception, but Dick Durock said that it was really popular in Europe, like especially like in the Netherlands.
Really?
Yeah. That's kind of weird, like how some of these things will catch on in other places. Like, for example, Cowboy Bebop, right? The anime series. Like here in America, it's really popular. Everyone knows. It's like everyone who's seen it, they say it's their favorite anime, right?
Right.
In Japan, like almost nobody knows about it.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I'm serious. Like every time I tell people about, like I teach a class on it, and like when I introduce it, like I ask my students, "Do you guys know this show?" No one's ever heard of it. No one's ever heard of it. Even like my adult students who are the same age as me, like nobody knows it at all.
Really? Now that's fascinating. But like over here, like you said, if you ask anybody about Cowboy, oh man, they'll go on and the greatest anime they ever made, blah blah blah, and listen, it's in my top 5.
But yeah, sometimes these things will catch on overseas, like David Hasselhoff being like a national idol in Germany for his singing of everything.
Yeah, I mean they even got a statue to him over there. Like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, there's a 100-foot tall Michael Jackson statue someplace in Budapest, I believe.
Yeah, Jesus.
People pray to the thing. Yeah, David Hasselhoff. I mean, whatchamacallit, that show that he did, it's still in reruns over there.
Knight Rider. Or Baywatch, one of the two.
Yeah, Baywatch. Yeah, Baywatch. They said Baywatch is like, Baywatch is still like, like one of the top 10 shows in Germany, even after all this time.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so weird how those things will catch on in other places.
David Hasselhoff did all of these albums in German that's never been released over here, but he released them over there. And people say, well, where does he get his money from? Well, apparently he's getting it from Germany.
All right. So now this movie actually inspired me to go on and start watching the new TV series. Or I say new because it was canceled after 10 episodes because of like they didn't get the tax write-offs they were supposed to with it, so they canceled the show.
And know something? That is one of the most fascinating stories I've heard in recent years, because a lot of times people say, oh, well, why'd they cancel this show? Why'd they cancel that show? A lot of times they cancel a show for the craziest reasons that you never heard of. There was a show with Kathy Bates a few years back. It was a David E. Kelly show where she played a lawyer. And I'll look up the name of it, but it was a very popular show. Everybody liked it. The ratings were great, but it got canceled. You know why it got canceled? Because NBC said, well, it's not pulling in the right demographic. Yeah. It was the older audience that was watching the show, and they wanted a younger audience because, of course, they want the audience with the 18 to 34. That's their sweet spot that they're looking for. And they didn't have
with Angel, do you remember why Angel was canceled? It was for the dumbest reason of all.
Why?
Because it was the top-rated show on WB at the time.
Yeah.
And they canceled it because the head of the network hated the show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I heard that.
That was the only reason why. It was the top-rated show. That and Buffy were the top-rated show. He got rid of Buffy first, and then Buffy went to UPN, and then he went after Angel next, even though it was like the top-rated show. And then that guy lost his job, I think a year or two after that, and then they were trying to get Joss Whedon to come back and redo Angel after that.
That is, that's just utterly mind blowing. I was quiet for a minute because I was looking at the name of that show. The name of that show was Harry's Law with Kathy Bates.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, and it was on NBC, and it was on there for like one season, and it was like a top rated show. But like I said, it was canceled because NBC didn't like the demographic. They said, well, the demographic is too old. And, I mean, shows get canceled for the craziest reason. And yes, Swamp Thing, because this show was getting a lot of critical notice. Everybody apparently loved it. They said, oh, it's a great show. It's a fantastic show. You need to watch it, and blah, blah, blah. And because they weren't getting the tax breaks that they thought that they was going to get. Apparently the state, they reneged on their, they made some kind of agreement. Yeah. And I guess nobody bothered to get anything down on paper. I guess it was one of those things like they said, okay, well, you bring the show here and, we'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. And since they didn't get it, they said, well, it was too expensive for them to produce.
I mean, they canceled it right after the first episode dropped. That's when they canceled it.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't even give it a chance, really. And it's like first they cut it short because it was supposed to be 13 episodes, and they cut it down to 10 episodes. And then, like, after the first episode dropped, they're like, actually, you know what? We're canceling it. But, part of the problem is also this DC Universe app, which was launched without really too much thought, it seems, because now Warner Brothers is starting their own streaming service, so they're going to be, probably going to be canning DC Universe completely. Because I guess, they saw what Disney's doing with Disney Plus, and they're like, oh, we're going to do that, and they're going to call it HBO Max.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what everybody is doing now. And really, you know what? It's really kind of insane over here with all of these different streaming services because everybody and their mother now.
Oh, it's nuts. Like Disney, I can understand because they own like half of all media ever produced.
Right, exactly.
Like I can understand that, and they're doing a lot of original content for it. Like they got all the MCU TV shows, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Hawkeye, She-Hulk, and they got the Star Wars stuff, like the Mandalorian. They're going to do, and they got all these different things they're going to be doing on there. So I totally get that, but like CBS, like. I'm not going to pay, $8 a month just to watch a Star Trek show because I don't give a shit about watching every episode of Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, exactly. Especially not when it's still in reruns on 3 or 4 different networks.
Yeah.
I mean, Big Bang Theory is being rerun over here on like 3D. What? TBS, Channel 9. Okay, in other words, I can see all the Big Bang Theory that I want already. I don't have to get another. But now, after having said that, we are going to be subscribing to CBS All Access. No, really, let me explain why. Because my wife, because we watched a free week, and we watched Discovery, like the first season of Discovery. And we said, okay, it's okay, but you know what? We didn't want to spend the money for it. Then she started watching this show called The Good Wife.
Oh, I heard that's a good show.
Yeah, and apparently there's a sequel or a spin-off series on CBS All Access. And now they've got Patrick Stewart coming back as Jean-Luc Picard.
Right, yeah.
So now my wife, because she loved The Next Generation.
Oh, okay.
So she says, well, I'm going to get All Access. I'm going to pay for it, which is okay with me because I was going to get Disney Plus and I was going to pay for that. Because like you said, they got all the MCU stuff that's coming on and they got Star Wars. And for you people that don't know me, I'm a Star Wars fanatic. If it's Star Wars, I'm into it. And they've got the Mandalorian. They're supposed to be doing, they're going to have a Han Solo series.
Really?
That's I heard that today. I have not confirmed it. I've been trying to confirm
when I was running down the shows and I mentioned the Mandalorian, and I was thinking about, in my head, I was thinking like they should really do a Han Solo series for that.
Yeah. But I'm trying to, because the story was on We Got This Covered. And
yeah.
Yeah, okay. You see, I ain't got to tell you. So I'm trying to find another
I wrote for them once, actually. I wrote an article for them one time.
Really?
I think it was about the DCEU and like how to like fix it going forward or something like that.
Oh, okay. How'd you like writing for them?
I mean, it was just that one piece I wrote.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all right. Like it was, but it's like they're just one of those like rumor mill sites. Like anyone can really do whatever they want for them. So
right, exactly. Their reporting is kind of sketchy, which is why.
Yeah.
But they had a story today saying that that as a matter of fact, the guy who played Solo in the movie. Mm-hmm. They said he's coming back, and there's going to be a Han Solo series. Ewan McGregor himself has said there's going to be an Obi-Wan series.
Oh yeah, now that I'm looking forward to because they were talking about doing a movie with him.
Oh, okay.
And then it seemed to fall through. And then I think it was after Solo's poor performance, then they said we're going to axe the Obi-Wan movie. But then they said they're going to be doing it for Disney Plus. So I'm like,
right, yeah,
which is a no-brainer.
Now, since Ewan McGregor himself said it, I said, okay, well, that's no bullshit. Because Ewan McGregor wouldn't said it unless he had signed to do it. So him I trust. But they're all planning, other Star Wars series and stuff like that. So, so I said, okay, well, I'm going to get that. But
in fact, Kevin Feige said he wants to do a Star Wars movie now.
Oh, okay, cool. Listen, I am a confirmed Star Wars fanatic. I was there in the summer of '77 when Star Wars first hit theaters, and my life was forever changed. That's all I got.
Well, you know what? Because you said your wife's a big Star Trek, our Next Generation fan. So maybe because before we started recording, we were talking about how you guys were thinking about doing a podcast of your own. That's something you guys could do like a Star Wars, Star Trek thing. Yeah. Maybe like do a rewatch of the series or something. Because that Next Generation was on for a long time.
Yeah, she liked just about all of them. I don't know if she liked Voyager. But I know. Well, I mean,
did anybody like Voyager?
You know what? I did not like Voyager during its original run.
Okay.
I watched it a few years later, and there's some things. Okay, let me put it this way. There's some things I appreciated what they tried to do with the show, but it was just like all over the place. It was just, I mean, that guy that played. What's his name? The first officer, the worst first officer in Starfleet history. The chick that played the half human, half Klingon, the engineer. She only had two moods: pissed off and even more pissed off. And here's something that a lot of people think is, they think I'm crazy when I say it, but no, I did not like the Black Vulcan.
Oh, really?
No, because you know why? Because, okay, it has been established in Star Trek lore that Vulcan has two suns, right? So we can assume that Vulcan is a desert world, mostly, right? So basically, all Vulcans should have been black right from the start. Yeah, but they weren't.
That's a good point. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, Vulcan's a desert planet. It's been said that. And, most people live in the desert are dark, especially if it's a planet with two suns. So therefore, Vulcan should have been dark skinned right from the start. But, that's what me, I don't know. I never, and I guess I'm kind of wonky that way, but but to me, it's kind of like pandering whenever they introduce black members of other races. Like, why should they even be black Vulcans?
Yeah. I get your point there.
Or black Klingons, or what? Really? Okay, like the Klingons. Most Klingons are dark skinned.
Yeah.
They're dark skinned.
So, it's getting back to Swamp Thing now to wrap up here. But
okay.
the TV show was really good. The recent one I'm really kind of pissed because I'm only like 5 episodes in so far, and it's only got like 5 episodes left. But they had tie-ins to the larger DC universe, like Blue Devil's on the show. Character you like, Phantom Stranger appears.
See, that's the only reason why I would watch it, because, you're not the only person that told me, because I wasn't going to watch it. I said, well, you know what? There's no reason for me to watch it because it's only 10 episodes. But somebody else told me, said, oh, well, Phantom Stranger's in it. I said, really? I said, Now you got my interest. Yeah.
Jason Woodrue, the Floronic Man. Madame Xanadu is in it.
Oh, okay.
The Rot is in it. And if they had done a second season, like they were saying, they wanted Matt Reeves to come in and play Constantine.
Ooh, okay. That was the same guy that did the show.
Yeah, he did the Constantine TV show, and then he was in the Arrowverse on Arrow, and then Legends.
Right, yeah. Oh, he's good. I like him.
Yeah. Oh, I love him. He's so good. He's so good in that role. And he also did the voice of John Constantine twice. He did it in there was a Constantine animated movie, and then there was the Justice League Dark, and he did the voice both times.
Oh, cool.
So he's down to play the character pretty much whenever, it looks like.
Yeah, because I was really surprised on Arrow when he showed up on Arrow. I said, "Oh wow, this is cool." Because wait a minute, Constantine was on what? It was on NBC, I believe, right?
It was on NBC, only one season.
One season, yeah.
And you know, it's so weird because it ended on this cliffhanger, and then he starts appearing in the Arrowverse stuff, and they never addressed the cliffhanger. So it's almost like that was like a completely different version of John Constantine in that show.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? I guess they figured they didn't want to bring that baggage. They just wanted
so, yeah. Now they got this streaming service. I mean, just give him back his own show and finish it up.
Yeah, and like I was saying when we started this, I mean, trying to keep up with all these different streaming services is like because now, so now that means that we're going to have Netflix, we're going to have Amazon Prime, we're going to have CBS All Access, and we're going to have Disney Plus. And me and my wife have cut our pinky fingers and sworn in blood. That's it. We're not subscribing to anything else. Because seriously, where do they think people are going to get all this money to subscribe to all these different?
Oh, you know what? I predict within the next 5 years, probably less than that, there's going to be an implosion, and a lot of these these streaming services are going to die.
I think that's what's going to happen myself because there's a lot of people, and you know what they're going to do? They're going to do something like I know, a lot of people I know, when Game of Thrones was on, they would just sign up to HBO, just watch the new season. And then when the last episode came on, then they cut their subscription,
Yeah, exactly. I think you're going to see a lot of people doing that kind of stuff. And
a lot of people are going to.
The ones that were already there, like Netflix, Hulu, Prime, they're going to stay around. And then Disney Plus will stay around. HBO Max, maybe. But CBS All Access, that's going to be on the... I predict that'll be the first one on the chopping block.
Yeah, I think what they're going to do is that they're going to start... Because I don't know if you were living here in the States when, it's like when Ma Bell first broke up and we had all of these different phone companies and stuff like that. And then after a time, what happened? Well, they started merging because, there were too many of them. And, I mean, first of all, it was too confusing, and then they couldn't have enough customers to support themselves. Because I think it was, who was it? Verizon merged with something else, and T-Mobile merged with somebody, or they just bought them out. So, so I agree with you. I think in 5 years, it's going to be the same thing with all these different streaming stuff like that. Because, Disney's going to last simply because, like you said, they own half of everything anyway. And they can afford to take a loss. And you know what? They can afford to take a loss. Really, they can.
Yeah, and they've got every single demographic you can even ever think about covered with all their content.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. You're going to have people like me who are into the Marvel stuff and into the Star Wars stuff. Well, we do, when we're signing up sight unseen, that's a no-brainer. The people that have the kids and stuff like that, where they're going to sign because Disney Plus is going to have the backlog of all of their old classic movies too.
Right.
And that's going to keep the kids happy. So, hey, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but all the other ones, you're going to see a lot of places start cutting deals with Netflix or Hulu or going back to them, and because they're just not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, and you see already with Netflix, because Netflix just shelled out a whole bunch of money to get the rights to Seinfeld.
Oh, really? I didn't read that.
Yeah, I think they're paying something like $300 million to get the rights to Seinfeld.
Because they've lost the rights to Friends now, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, so they got they've got Seinfeld for like the next 5 years or something like that.
Okay, because that's been on Hulu actually for the past few years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when when the contract is up at Hulu, it's going to go back to Netflix because it was on Netflix for a while.
Oh, really?
Seinfeld
I didn't know that.
Netflix. But
Oh,
a lot of
okay.
these programs that are on Hulu and all these other things, they were on Netflix at one time because Netflix at one time was the only game in town.
Right. Yeah.
But then when all these other people started saying, okay, well, you know what, we want to get our own stream, which is one thing that pissed me off about Discovery was that you have the rest of the world, because all of the other Star Trek series are on Netflix, including the animated series on Netflix. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the rest of the world, they get to watch Discovery on Netflix. Mm-hmm. We're the only country that has to pay extra.
Oh, the DC stuff too, like the a lot of the DC content, like Titans and Doom Patrol, it's on Netflix in other countries.
Yeah, but not here.
Yeah.
We're the only suckers that's got to pay extra for it.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll change in the next few years. All right. So, any last thoughts on Swamp Thing?
Only that if you're looking for a reasonably entertaining movie, okay. This is what you got to do, folks. When you watch Swamp Thing, you got to remember when it was made. This is 1982. There was no CGI. There was, practical effects. This is a man in a rubber suit, a very well-made rubber suit, I might add. But
in fact, now that you mentioned, I remembered watching, because I was watching with my girlfriend, and I'm watching him move, and I'm like, you can tell he's in a rubber suit. She's like, what? How do you know? I'm like, look at the way it creases and everything. Like I've watched so many movies now that I can't not notice these things. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you can't not know it. But one thing that always bugs me about people now when they watch movies made back in the 1970s and 70s, oh, that's so cheesy, or that's so corny, oh, that's so crappy. How come they couldn't make it crappy? Because, folks, they had to work with what they had to work with at the time.
Right.
And considering what they had to work with, they turned out a hell of a lot of good movies. Okay, just go see the movie, folks.
It's got nostalgia impact. Like, I don't remember really watching this. I think I saw it on TV once, like a lifetime ago, and I only remember bits and pieces. Like, I think I only really remember parts of the dungeon scene. That's really all I remember from this movie. But so I was watching it, and I was watching it with fresh eyes, and going back and watching the trailer before I saw it, I was not expecting a lot. And yeah, it kind of falls apart in the third act, especially like the climactic battle between Swamp Thing and Arcane when Arcane transforms into a monster. It's like full on Godzilla Power Rangers type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But again, and like I said, taking in the context of you and I, when we said when we were going to start this podcast that we were going to look at some older movies, going back and revisiting movies that maybe people hadn't seen in a while, hadn't heard of. I think that if you call yourself a student of superhero cinema, as Perry and I, we consider ourselves to be students of such. Then, and if you consider yourself, you good people listening to this, then I think that you would want to, just out of the curiosity factor, if nothing else, you would want to see, this early example of superhero cinema to see, where it started at, because, as Perry pointed out so accurately, for a character that really a lot of people don't know about, he's had a very varied life in, film and TV.
Yeah, well, because this is one of those characters that can easily, because this was, you guys got to remember that this was 1982. The only real successful, serious superhero movie at this point was Superman the movie. Yeah. And so like this was pre-Batman. Like everyone's idea of superheroes was still rooted in the 1966 Batman at this point.
Folks, it took a while for us to get where we are. It took a while for us to get to Avengers Endgame and Black Panther being nominated for a Best Picture Academy Award. It took us a while to get there. And Swamp Thing is one of the places where it started.
Well, and Swamp Thing too. Like Blade, like The Crow. It's one of these properties that can easily cross over to other genres that appeal to more mainstream audiences back then. Like right. Swamp Thing like you look at it and it's not like if you don't know anything about Swamp Thing, you go in, you watch this movie in 1982, you don't know it's a superhero movie. You go in, you watch Blade, you don't know Blade is a superhero movie.
No, well, Blade was not, and which is why I tell people all the time. I said Blade was not marketed. They say, oh yeah, well, that's where the MCU started. No, it didn't. It was advertised as the newest Wesley Snipes action movie. It was not, matter of fact, when I told most people that Blade was a character from a comic book, they said, get out of here. And I had to show it to them because they didn't believe. They thought it was a character that Wesley Snipes had come up with. And,
In fact, the only reason I knew Blade was a comic character was because he appeared in the Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh, okay. Well, see, there you go.
That was the only reason I knew. If I had never seen the Spider-Man cartoon and Blade came out, I would not have known he was a Marvel character because they don't even mention Marvel Comics in the credits at all. They
mention nothing about Marvel Comics in there. See, now I knew the character because I have. And yes, I am bragging here. I have a complete run of Tomb of Dracula from the 1970s, Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan, where Blade was a supporting character. So, I was telling people the history of the character, and their minds were blown. Because, like I said, most of them think that this is a character that Wesley Snipes, that he came up with. Because, and in this movie, Swamp Thing, there's a very little blurb that's at the end of it, or at the beginning, I think in the credits, they said, well, based on the character, that appears
from
in
DC Comics,
yeah, and that's it. But it's so fast that if you blink, you miss it. And again, it goes back to what I'm saying. This movie was sold as a Wes Craven movie. It wasn't sold as a superhero movie or whatever. So people knew that Wes Craven was a horror movie guy. So they just assumed that this was another horror movie. Most people, I doubt that 90% of the people that went to see this back when it debuted in 1982 had no idea that Swamp Thing was a comic book character.
Oh, I remember when I was a kid and I saw the Swamp Thing cartoon. Like I didn't know it was a DC character until years later.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody had no idea.
Yeah,
they just knew that they just knew. Like I said, this was sold as a Wes Craven movie.
And you know what? It's interesting. Seeing Wes Craven direct a superhero movie of sorts, and it really makes you wonder if he had survived to this era. Everything he'd learned over his long career. What kind of superhero movie could he make these days?
Yeah, exactly. And if he had the budget, that he wanted to have, if Wes Craven had, $50 million.
Well, I mean, you picture him doing something like Doctor Strange.
Like Doctor Strange, exactly.
I mean, that'd be like totally in his wheelhouse, especially if he has like Nightmare as the villain. I mean, that would have been mind-blowing.
Oh yeah, Nightmare. Yeah, that'd have been right up his alley. Yeah, Doctor Strange.
Or if he does Blade or something like that. Or I mean, it really it's really really sad because you see like he did treat this material with respect, He did. I would have loved to see Wes Craven do like a Dracula movie. Oh God, yeah. Or him doing Blade or something like that.
Yeah, doing Blade or Ghost Rider.
Oh God, that would have been amazing. Him doing Ghost Rider. But anyway, check out Swamp Thing. And watch it with the mindset that this is a different era. And this is Wes Craven before he really made his bones. Like, this is pre-Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. But it's like I said, if you're a Wes Craven fan, it's still well worth watching. Like I said, if you want to see it, it's on YouTube. The picture quality, I'm going to tell you right now, is not the best. But if you want to invest a couple of dollars and go ahead and rent it, I believe it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. We'll have a link on the webpage. Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to do that, hey, be my guest. I'm just trying to save you a couple of dollars here, But.
All right. So that's all. Now next week next episode, not next week, will be my pick. And
Yes,
so
please. I can't wait.
I thought we'd jump ahead a little bit and take a look, because we were talking about these different, like, starting these different eras of superhero cinema. So I thought we'd take a look at another big milestone, and that is X-Men.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, next episode, tune in. We'll be watching and talking about the first X-Men movie, which pretty much introduced the world to Hugh Jackman.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say this is the one with you, Jack. Okay, we're doing that one. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
The very first one from 2000.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting to go back and see again after all these years now.
Because I don't believe I've seen that one in about 10 years. Yeah, it's been about 7 years. Okay. You know when the last time I saw it? I saw it because I wouldn't see Logan.
Oh, okay.
And I saw it, and
that was about 3 years ago or so.
Right, and I just happened to catch X-Men because when Logan came out, like all of the cable channels was basically like running all of the X-Men movies. Mm-hmm. And I caught the first one. I said, you know what? I haven't seen the first one in like a long time. Let me check it out. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to this. Nice little jump ahead. Okay.
And that's the nice thing about the way we're doing this, because we can jump around. We don't even have to go in series orders if we wanted to. Like, we could skip into like different, like the third movie in a series or something like that. Oh, because everyone's seen these movies, so we're just kind of like seeing where we go with it.
Yeah. And of course, as always, if there's a superhero movie that you think that Perry and I should be discussing, or that you would just like to hear us go off about for 2 hours, please, by all means, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And apparently we're convincing some people, because one of our listeners just posted on the site this morning that after we talked about The Crow, he had never really thought about looking at the sequels, but now he's going to go check them out after hearing our discussion.
Oh, and see, you know what? That's what I enjoy hearing most of all, because if we can inform as well as entertain and especially get you to go watch these movies, mm-hmm. and then come back and talk about it with us or go talk about it with your friends, hey, that's the whole point right there.
Yeah, and you can come and talk with us. We got our Facebook group, Superhero Cinephiles. We're on Twitter at Super Cinema Pod, and we got a Facebook page as well. Or you can just drop by our website, send us an email if you don't want to talk in front of other people. That's fine. Website is superherocinephiles.com. All right, that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode, and drop us a line. Let us know what you think. Did you watch Swamp Thing? Have you not watched it? Talk to us. Let us know what you think about the movie, and we'll start a thread on the Facebook page. See what people think about it as well. So join the Facebook group and come on, stop by and have a chat with us.
Yeah, we're there all the time, pretty much. Me. I'm a whore for attention, so.
All right. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next episode to talk about X-Men.
There you go. Thank you very much for listening. This is Derek Ferguson.
And I'm Perry Constantine, and we'll see you guys next time.